Hi, my name is Remus. I'm a software architect and CTO of Yonder. I have today with me Bogdan, one of my colleagues. Bogdan, can you tell you a couple of words about yourself?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Bogdan. I'm Bogdan Chiorean. I'm a delivery manager and head of product and innovation in Yonder. And I'm taking care of certain collaborations that Yonder has with customers overseas, and with this new direction of product innovation.
Okay. So Bogdan, we are working on modernizations for the past 30 years. And apparently it was needed that you came and make a little bit of order through all the type of modernizations that we did. So last year you came up with 6 categories or 6 styles of modernization, which you also named very nicely. And I think that puts quite a nice structure into different approaches of modernization, also from a risk perspective, effort perspective, but also from a kind of attainable objective perspective. And that was very, very nice. Can you describe a little bit your thinking and what are the names basically that you provided to the 6 styles of modernization?
So I think the thought process was like finding this entire experience that we had and seeing all sorts of colleagues that had maybe similar experiences, challenges, and we preserve that knowledge in a way or another. But I was feeling that we miss very visual and memorable way of thinking about all those modernizations. So together with some colleagues, we came out with some names to describe very specifically and to find metaphors for what a modernization might be. So you can imagine we have things like putting lipstick on a pig, or the Frankenstein approach, or things like the strangler fig approach, or modernizing through putting in the washing machine, or product bait, like you would be during fishing.
And on life support.
Yeah, and in certain cases, unfortunate cases, we had experience in which we needed to put the products of our customers on life support.
And I've used your categorization a couple of times in some discussions, and I must admit, they are very good metaphors. So it makes perfect sense for everybody once presented with the categories of styles or approaches for modernization. And maybe let's start with the first one, lipstick on a pig. And I think this is something that's quite popular. I mean, people resonate with that and understands quite fast what's the basic idea in putting lipstick on a pig. Can you describe a little bit what are the characteristics of this type of modernization?
I think typically you would be having a certain product that still does and covers the business need. On the other hand, the layout or the way it looks and feels might be pretty dated. So in that case, you might want to find a specific way in which to improve the whole look and feel while still maintaining it, maintaining the coverage of the business needs, and keeping it as a business differentiator, basically.
And this one is important because normally a customer would not really care about the technology. For us, it's very important that's React or Angular or Vue.js or things like that, or single page application. But from a regular user perspective, there is no impact and no difference.
They don't care, And I think we've seen all sorts of cases. On one hand, you would be seeing very technical customers that came to us and said, okay, we want to rewrite. Or other types of customers that they were just saying, okay, so the application is super good, but it's still working in the 90s, so and looking like being in the 90s. So I need something which is new. And in this type of scenarios, just looking at it from an investment perspective, with a relatively small investment compared to the size of the application, you might have the possibility to put lipstick on a pig and have something more bright and shiny, looking more like being in these years.
In this particular case, we're not talking about a major change in technology. Most of the times it's just a change in the styling and look and feel of the application, right? So from this perspective, they invested effort and the risk is rather small and low.
Yeah.
And it's a very good approach, especially for web application, maybe older style of web application, Web 1.0, or maybe even rich internet applications.
But not only. So this applies to pretty much everything. So also to older applications that might be like desktop one. So we're currently performing one application written in .NET, WPF, which looks very, very old. But now with making use of, I don't know, open source UI libraries, we are just revamping the look and feel and still maintaining everything working like it used to. But
in this case, it's maybe a little bit more heavy duty than a lighter approach. Like in HTML, it's very easy to just change the style sheets of an application and impact the look and feel in a major way. But you also mentioned that this happens also with native application. I also seen this with C, C++ based applications where introducing frameworks like Qt managed to provide a fresher look to the otherwise maybe a little bit dated UI of the application. It's not as lightweight as a web application and a style sheet, but it's still a relatively low risk approach.
For sure, and usually, again, you're right, because there is another dimension that our customers are looking at, which is how easy they can find, I don't know, local developers, local talent, or internationally talent to still maintain or renew the surface of their application. So typically, it's more easy to do it on web, as there is quite a lot of knowledge in the market. Everybody knows how to play a bit with front ends, while in the desktop world, as the things are, slowly fading away in a way or another, it's way harder to find.
And it's not just about look and feel, right? Because most of the times you're also cleaning up a little bit the interfaces, making it more consistent in terms of spacing, in terms of fonting, which results in an improved usability in the application. But from this perspective, maybe an important part here is that there is always a trade-off between the amount of change that you do on the design side or look and feel side and the amount of effort that's required in the changes in the implementation. So maybe one tricky part in this area is having kind of an interesting compromise between how major changes you perform and what are kind of the low-hanging fruits in the changes that you have with the biggest impact. Are there any kind of other best practices that you have experienced in putting lipstick on the pig? Where would you apply it?
So I think typically we would be applying it only in places in which we wanted to make it look more like our days, and trying not to touch too much the logic, the way the things are interacting, as and applications also might behave like wires in a house. So at some point, if you draw one wire, it might came with the entire system that it's in the walls and so on. So typically this type of scenario in which you're having good business coverage, so your software brings a lot of value to.
So functionality-wise, the application does exactly what's expected, and also technology-wise, is not necessarily in a bad place. So we're not talking about deprecated, obsolete, unsupported technology. Basically, the technology is sound, the functionality is sound. It just needs a little bit of a refresh in the look and feel. It's very nice. What would be the next approach for modernization?
So maybe the next approach with still maintaining the risk lower, because usually that's the thing that plays quite an important role, and which we sometimes very late realize is the risk of performing that modernization or transformation or replacement or whatever that would be. So in terms of still maintaining lower risks, it's about the Frankenstein approach, which means gradually replacing bits and pieces of your application, make them work together with the old parts, while still providing value and structure for the business and for the end customer. So I usually do a nice parallel. So if you would want to, for example, renovate your bathroom, so you have the option to get down all the tiles on the walls, on the flooring, and then, get the slime, get the mortar from the walls out, getting your toilet and your sink, and
So
or
you're renovating your house, right?
yeah, for sure, for sure. And the other option is to like take it tile by tile, so taking out the tile, then taking the mortar out behind the tile, and then putting new mortar, putting new tiles, until you will actually be replacing your entire bathroom. Now, the big change between those type of approaches is that in the first approach, you're having an unusable bathroom for quite some time until it's finished, while in the second approach, you're having a usable bathroom all the time. For sure, it will not look fancy in the meanwhile while having, different types of styles all together. But if you're playing it smartly, it might also look well enough.
So in this particular case, it's not just about the look and feel of the application, right? This is also about the technology behind the application, and also maybe sometimes about the functionality behind the application. So it's basically re-implementing parts of the application while still maintaining the same application context. So from a user perspective, they don't need to use different applications, separate applications for this.
For sure. And I think, again, we have multiple types of examples. Typically, this applies well in very large applications in which an entire transformation or something like a Big Bang approach will keep them without usage for years. So I mean, nobody can afford that.
And also I would imagine for applications for which you don't really have that many personas, because we have a modernization style in which if you can kind of delimit the type of job types in an application and extract them separately, you would have maybe a better approach to modernization. But in this particular case, you don't have that many job types. So basically you have only a few job types, so everybody is forced to use kind of the same application. So you're not able to separate or create multiple instances of the application. You need to make it in the same context, right?
Yeah.
And I also seen this approach as a very gradual and slow approach to shift or tilt technologies. We have products or companies that are based on languages for which there are no supply of developers, basically. And
you might think about
COBOL and PLI and things like that. So basically the big challenge for these companies is that the existing workforce at some point is going to retire, and the new developers are definitely not willing to learn these old and obsolete systems. So basically you're also looking as a way to shift or tilt your development force together with tilting your basically technology. So maybe when you started 30 years ago was COBOL, and you had COBOL developers, but in 60 years, you're going to have Java and Java developers, and meanwhile, you're slowly tilting not only the developer skills required, but also the technology behind the application. So I think the Frankenstein approach is also a very nice gradual approach to modernize not only your application, but also your skills and workforce in a way that's less risky and somehow future looking. Okay. And we mentioned about personas, and I guess this is our favorite approach right now.
And I think this is the third approach that we call the strangler fig. So I also like to draw it very visual. So when you're talking about the strangler fig, is that tree that usually grows around like a normal tree. And what typically happens is that it creates like an outer structure that it's so tight in such a way that it pretty much strangles the existing tree, so that the tree dies. On the other hand, the outside structure of the strangler fig is so strong that it actually becomes the tree. So it's also very similar to like in a normal application. So think about having like a main monolith or like a big application where you've invested like years and years of experience and engineering, and then you want to transform it in a way. So typically the way we're approaching it is we're thinking about what are the personas that might be using that application.
Yeah.
Personas meaning type of actors
Yeah.
that
Or
are
job
using
types,
it.
basically.
Yeah, or job types. And then based on it to think about the future into creating multiple applications which are very specialized for a specific job type or
Yeah.
for a specific persona. And then gradually implement this type of applications,
Yeah.
which in the end will become your application while having both of them running in the same time.
So basically, you're countering in your monolith application pieces of functionalities that are specific to certain job types, and then extracting or decoupling them from the monolith and providing a new, fresh implementation of a smaller application that's specifically tailored for those specific job types.
Yeah.
And from this perspective, this manages to achieve not only a rejuvenation of the application, but also it provides you an ability to introduce new technologies, also to shift the technology.
And not only that, it also provides you the capabilities to enrich or to go upper on the added value that you can provide. So if you're on the systems of a record, then you might go to systems of engagement or systems of intelligence directly on top of it, working together with your existing application. And
so basically, you're not just rebuilding your system of record, but basically you're elevating the value proposition. Because if you look at the tiring system, you have systems of records, which is basically all the traditional ERP type of applications. But then you have systems of engagements, and the particularities of systems of engagements is that allows you to do your job in your own environment. Like a field service worker in a utilities field is able to interact with the software system in front of the utility meter while interacting with the job. Or a persona is able to interact with the public services while being on a couch through a self-service portal. So basically it allows you to perform your jobs in a setting that's closer to your work environment
and also being open to new job functions. And typically what we're seeing and what we're experiencing is that, it started with a saying, so we do believe that the biggest added value that a software product company has, it is business logic code. Whatever that might be, or in whatever form that might be, that's the core of the business of a product company. And typically what we recommend to do as a first step is to try to isolate that, maybe create some interfacing layers so that product companies can perform this triangular fig approach.
And I guess comparing with the Frankenstein approach, this one, it also requires a big effort and investment because looking overall, you're still replacing all your system, but you're doing it in an iterative manner. So from a risk perspective, you're fully in control because you're only building small things and always shipping and validating them to customers. And I guess also compared to the Frankenstein approach, in the same manner, it allows you to prioritize what are the functionalities that you're delivering. So if you have parts of your application that's not entirely aligned anymore with the expectations of your customers, you're able to focus on that and basically fix that earlier than maybe other parts of the application.
And doing that for diminishing the risk. On the other hand, there are some drawbacks as well. So if you're counting it all along, typically the amount of effort invested is higher than like a big bang approach. On the other hand, you're having the risk mitigation as early as possible. On the other hand, what we're seeing, and if you're smart enough, you can also price those new applications differently so that you will have extra revenue streams to actually support the core of your application while solving also some maybe other new types of challenges and needs.
Indeed, in terms of length and duration, it tends to be a lengthier approach, but unless you have some kind of a constraint from a technology or supplier perspective, that length is also not an issue because you're constantly delivering value. Not only delivering value, also delivering innovation. So basically you're constantly perceived by your customer as innovating, and that I observe that it puts less pressure on needing to replace the full application suite as you're constantly
Yeah.
able to deliver modern functionality where it matters, in
Yeah.
essence.
Yeah.
Okay, but we have also some less modern, less desirable approaches,
Yeah.
right? We have done some in the past that might not always make sense
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. Yeah. So one particular one might be the washing machine
Yeah.
approach. So we had situations in which there was a need to do a full rewrite. So throw away the code because of varying reasons. So pressure put it by vendors that are at the end of their life cycle. I don't know. We've seen things like tripling the prices overnight,
Yeah.
which puts immense pressure on a product company. So in that type of scenarios, basically you will be doing like a big bang approach. So start it from scratch. On the other hand, there's still so again, I think along the years we realized that a full rewrite without performing any tweaks doesn't make sense. So in order to diminish at least a bit the risks with the washing machine approach, what we're usually trying to do is to find a way to automate at least partially the creation of the application by using generation of screens or generating parts of it, generating maybe some of the boilerplate. And I think lately with this whole discussion over generative AI, it will make more and more sense to tap into this kind of a solution so that it will diminish way more the risks of performing a new rewrite.
So in essence, the washing machine is about having constraints that doesn't allow you to do a transformation of the application that's a more traditional iterative and maybe lengthier transformation.
Yeah.
So you have constraints for which you need to invent ways that you're generating more code.
Yeah.
So you're not transforming your application, you're basically replatforming your application.
Yeah.
You're changing the technology of the application without, at least at first, also changing the functionality. So you're delivering pretty much the same functionality, but in a different platform and different technology. And from this perspective, the big disadvantages for this approach are mostly related to the value that's being created. Because again, we discussed that customers are not always aware of the technology changes, they don't care about it. So basically they will receive exactly the same functionality, but in a different platform, which for them doesn't make much difference from a usage perspective. So it's a big problem in upselling this new this new application.
And not only that. So I think we don't have many industries in which you don't have competition now.
Yeah.
So look, the competition will not sleep while you're performing all those transformations and full rewrites. So you also need to think about that in a specific way and incorporate that to your overall risk as well.
So basically we are saying that while doing this one-to-one transformation, you're replacing your system of record, while maybe the competition is meanwhile building systems of engagement and systems of intelligence, and basically creating an even more gap between your product and their product in there. Also, I guess this approach is having other disadvantages as well. Like for instance, we have seen situations in which you're transforming a native application in a web application, and a web application is exposed to security risk or risk that normally the native application would not be exposed of. But the big problem with the transformation is that if security was not there in the first place, it's probably not going to be there in the resulting product, right?
Yeah, but again, I think typically this is the last frontier. So it's choosing between not having a business anymore and doing something right now. And we also, I think, rarely recommend. And I think if you're a traditional product company, you might be saying, okay, who's having that problem? And that's the nice part for us at Yonder, because I think seeing like 40 different products or working for 40 different products in parallel per year, we've acquired a lot of experience over the last 30 years to see also this kind of problems.
Right. But the truth is, it's not only Yonder doing this type of services. There are other companies that do kind of an automated washing machine style conversion, like from Visual Basic 6 to kind of a .NET approach. And the big disadvantages I've still seen is still from a risk perspective, it's a large project with a very large risk. From a result perspective, you do manage to get a replatforming, so you do manage to get a new set of technologies, but you're not always creating new value for the customer. So there is always a bit of a tough discussion in upselling the resulting applications to customers. And also sometimes the applications are not entirely adapted to the expectations of today's world. So they look like a new application and they are based on the technology that like a new application, but they don't have some of the characteristics of a new application, right? So this is still part of the disadvantages of this approach. And interesting in this perspective is the, let's say, new functionalities made possible by OpenAI and ChatGPT and Copilot and applications like this, which are amazing at converting code. But I think we have to remember ourselves to also make sure that we are re-architecturing some of these applications, because if it's garbage in, it's probably going to be garbage out from this perspective. So that's why it's still a bit of a tricky application.
For sure. And what I would be adding here is that since this is a very risky approach, try to mitigate the risks as much as possible, maybe performing proof of concepts, participating to a hackathon in which you're trying to do that, besides and not blindly thinking that this should be the way and I'm betting all my money on it.
Is this an approach suitable for an iterative delivery method, or it's a big bang always?
I think it really depends if you can isolate the set of features and functionalities that will make sense, which can take you towards the strangler fig approach, and also it's about the platform you're operating with. But in most of the cases that I've seen, it was impossible to run intermediate versions.
And that being said, this approach sometimes can be applied at lower levels than application. I was talking specifically about maybe database conversions, like converting automatically from an Oracle PLSQL type of code towards a maybe PostgreSQL application. So some parts can also be applied in a lower risk setting to smaller subsets of the whole application and legacy part.
So for example, situations in which we used this kind of an approach, I don't know, having a very legacy software in which vendors put pressure or unsupported technology. We've seen situations in which customers that were running.
So you have an expiry date on your platform.
Yeah, exactly. They were having an expiry date, not being supported anymore. So they needed to do something fast.
And I think this is related to another nice categorizations, which is life support, basically. It's again about expiring support. Can you describe it?
So if we're thinking about this whole washing machine approach, this is typically a thing that goes a bit long term. On the other hand, like you were mentioning, you might have technology that will expire soon, or you're very close to it and you did nothing, which happened. Just remember about Flash, Silverlight, and there are others for sure. And then you realize that you're in a point in which the technology will expire and it's going to be hard to have a business. So typically on life support, as a technique that we're applying, is to buy more time. And it might be things like encapsulating the current technology in such a way that it can still run. So for the Flash approach, I don't know, making it run into a web container that still has Flash and transforming it as another application, or any setting like this that will buy you time.
So basically isolating the problematic component and making sure that we are supporting it in such a way that we can continue to deliver functionalities while still controlling the environment, maybe from a security perspective or something like that. We had a very good example recently. You mentioned Flash. We had situations in which basically recent rewrite was delivered pretty much along the same date when the last browser removed the support from Flash, from their support basically. So leaving without a carrying vehicle to running that application, and just bundling an Electron basically web application, basically bundling the application in an Electron shell, allowing us to have a plugin of Flash that we can control in our own environment, allow that application to run still in a secure environment. And
which still receive updates,
and so on.
but still that has an expiry date as well.
So it didn't solve the end of the problem.
So it just buys you time. I think that's the typical example in which we're using the on-live support.
So the last approach, I think it's very similar to the strangler fig. At least it looks like a subset of the strangler fig. It's by building an additional kind of new application alongside the old application. So can you describe a little bit the last one?
Yeah. So what happens sometimes is that you as a product company, you will be ending up in a situation in which your product still performs well to the market, brings value to the customers, but the competition is running at different levels. Maybe if you're like a systems of a record, they might be already competing in systems of engagement and things like that. On the other hand, I've seen situations in which the main product is based on some other products, like a plugin. And at some point, it becomes more difficult to sell it to the end customer. So with the product-based approach, you're just creating a bright and shiny new product that complements the existing one in such a way that it will be helping you sell faster the entire thing as a bundle. So this is it's very similar to the strangler fig approach.
So most of the time we are talking about just building a mobile application that should go alongside with your system of record that would allow certain type of users to be mobile, for instance, or maybe a web portal that allows certain type of users to engage with your system of record through a nice modern interface. While still your core system being instrumental and important and still featureful, and you will have a large set of users that are happy to use that. So basically it's complementing your application.
It's just complementing the current application. Typically it's a smaller application, which means a lower investment, but on the other hand, it delivers way more value as a thing. And typically we look for use cases for new types of personas that you might want to cover. On the other hand, for manual types of processes that you might want to automate in such a way that the flow of the business goes better with the two or the few of them.
So basically, to try to summarize, if we try to put them in categories, if your technology platform is expiring or is unsupported, or you want to move away from that platform, you have as options the Frankenstein approach, the strangler fig approach, and basically that's it as a way to modernize.
But that's pretty much
will
mean a longer term approach or a mid to long term approach. And then if you're having troubles with expiry tags for your technology, you can buy time with putting it on live support.
So basically to buy time, you use live support for these expiring platforms, and then you deal with them by Frankenstein or strangler fig approach. If your technology platform is fine, it works well, but you're missing some functionalities. Basically, you have the product bait. If you're looking to basically provide just a refreshed UI, you're looking at lipstick on a pig. And if you're looking to basically improve the technology or tilt the technology, you can look also at the strangler fig and basically the Frankenstein approach. But in essence, if you're just looking at low-hanging fruits, you have the product bait and you have the lipstick on a pig as a way to refresh your applications.
And as a last frontier, the washing machine, if you have no other options, instead of just doing it as a big bang approach, to at least start from somewhere, trying to diminish the risk.
Well, thank you, Bogdan, for doing this kind of categorization. I think it's very, very useful. And I think it's an interesting discussion.
Thank you. And looking forward to have more discussions like this in the future.
Likewise.